So having got the Mac, got it set up, got the peripherals linked, and all the external disk drives sorted out in the proper format, it was time to download Cubase and all my VST instruments and effects. And that's where the fun begins. So the first thing I wanted to install on the Mac was Cubase itself. And you start with the Cubase Download Assistant, or with the Steinberg Download Assistant. And this is one of those Zen things. You pick what you want to install and you say, download it, install it. And off it goes and it does it. It doesn't really require any attention, doesn't require any maintenance, but it does require patience. As you can see, some of the libraries are quite large. The PANASONIC content is 3.3 gig. The Groove Agent content is 6 gig. That does take a little while to download. But no worry, I thought I'll just download it all onto the Mac's hard drive. There's nothing else on there. There's plenty of space, and then I'll move the content. Because previously I had the content for Steinberg on my projects drive on my old laptop, and it was what I wanted. It was readily accessible. That was fine. It all downloaded, it installed, not a problem. Then I thought, right, I'll use the library manager to move it. And the library manager's a really funky piece of kit. You just say where you want your stuff to live. In my case, the project's Steinberg content, that was going to be the location. And move and send it all across. Tried to do it and it failed. I knew what to do. I'd done it before on the PC, but it was not having it. No, you don't have permission. It's not there. That was a bit frustrating. But the solution was at hand. And I'll come back to the solution in a minute. The other thing I needed to do was to copy my existing settings out of Cubase on the laptop and bring them into Cubase on the Mac. This was something else I needed to do on a regular basis. I needed to copy all my presets from one installation of, for example, Slate Digital's VMR to the installation of VMR on the Mac. And I didn't want to be plugging and unplugging stuff. I'll put a link below to the video where there's a walkthrough of how to do this. Fundamentally, on the desktop of my PC, there's a folder called Mac Transfer. And I can connect to that folder from the Mac. I just simply go to connect to server, and that connects across my internal Wi-Fi network to my laptop. And it brings this little folder up, the Mac Transfer. Now, what I'm going to do is transfer some of the graphics you've just seen, but I'm going to bring them into my folder for the movie tonight, or the video tonight movies. It's the movies folder. So we just got that, pull them, bring them across to there. And it takes a moment, has a think, and it will copy them across. And if we look in there, there's the items that are on the Mac Transfer. So I use that same technique. I would just download all my presets for Amplitude, for Slate Digital, for Cubase, anything I needed to move between the two computers that was a small file. I would just stick it in the Mac Transfer, drag it across to the Mac, and then from there do with it what was necessary. So that's just a little bonus tip for you if you like. So having installed Cubase, I wanted then to start installing my third-party instruments and VSTs, and I thought I would start with Native Instruments. So here we are in Native Access. The first thing I did was to download the actual instruments themselves, battery, contact, etc. What Native Instruments refers to as the applications. So I downloaded the different bits that I needed, didn't install Guitar Rig 5 because I've got Guitar Rig 6, that kind of thing. There's an opportunity, this process, by downloading and installing stuff to avoid cramming the hard drive with stuff that I didn't need. And I was a bit critical of some of the VST manufacturers for reasons that I'll come into in a future video. Having done that, it was then a question of installing the contact instruments and the machine expansions. And that was two different experiences altogether. My contact libraries sit on a number of different drives. And the way I installed them was I simply went into the preferences here, file management, set the content location for whichever drive I was trying to download from, came back to here and just hit install. I think it actually said relocate. I hit that for all of them that were on that drive and it installed them. Magic. Whoopie-doo. It took next to no time to install all the contact libraries, and I've got a lot of them. The one thing that really caused me a problem was the previews. Now, if you've got Complete Control software open and you click on a preset, doesn't really matter whether it's a contact instrument, reactor, whatever, you hear a little snippet of the sound, and that's that 8.5 gigabytes of stuff. That's where it's stored. At least that's what I understand it to be. Could I get it to download? Not a chance. Not a chance. It wasn't for having it. Okay, park that. Along with the issue with the Steinberg content not being relocatable, I will just park the issue about previews and come back to it. Maybe I'll figure it out. I had a long way to go. A lot of software to install. The next thing was to install my machine expansions. And at that point, I hit a brick wall. Tried to do it, and Native Access says, no, you can't do that. You've got to do something else first. And this was a eureka moment, because this was how I solved the Steinberg content problem. If you go on the Native Instruments website, you need to find this page. I'll try and put a link below to the page. Full disk access, that's what you need. And the way you do it, very simply, is you need to open your system settings, and it's under privacy and security. You go all the way down to full disk access, and you find here those programs which you have given permission to access your external drives. Now, some of these are Arturia Instrument from the V collection. They get turned on when you actually access the standalone version. When you download the V collection, you get the plug-in VST and you get the standalone. And the standalone, when you launch it, says need to access external drives, and you go, yeah, and it turns itself on in here. When I scrolled down, what I found was that I had to turn full disk access on for Native Access and the other Native Instruments applications, the ones that run in the background. The Steinberg Download Assistant was there, but the Steinberg Library Manager wasn't. And from memory, I had to turn on the Toontrack Product Manager as well. The Steinberg Library Manager wasn't there at all. It wasn't just a question of flicking the switch, it wasn't there. So what you have to do is go into this little plus here, click enter your password, more of that later, and at that point you can then go to the applications folder on your Mac, find the program that you want to add it to this list, and then give it permissions. Once I'd done that, I was able to move the Steinberg content. Not a problem. So I had to do that in order to install the machine expansions. When I came to look at them, I found a bit of an issue, because when I'd installed them on the PC, I'd installed them in the root of the drive, like everything else. I just had everything together, mixed up together. And Magnetic Coast is a machine expansion, and that's where I installed it when that drive was plugged into a PC. It wasn't there. I wasn't finding my machine expansions in the same place. The reason is I have to delete these because they're now redundant. The reason is that when I downloaded them, they were downloaded into this user's shared folder, and that is now where all my machine expansions live, together with a few other bits and pieces like the TRK01 stuff and some of my reactor stuff, rounds and that sort of thing. They now are in this shared library, this strange place. I didn't want them there, I didn't ask for them there, but that's where they've got put. Just something to be aware of if you're porting a complete disk drive of NI stuff from one system to another. It will download them again, and not in the same place. I just thought it would overwrite them, but it didn't. In the process of downloading all those machine expansions, it fixed the issue with the previews. So again, it was a bit of a Zen thing. Set them all to download, go away and do something more interesting. Come back, but the previews thing was fixed. So having installed them, I thought it was time to fire up Cubase. And I'll put a link down below to Chris Salim's walkthrough of how to copy your Cubase preferences and settings from one installation of Cubase to another. In his case, he's going from an old Mac to a new Mac. In my case, I went from a PC to the new Mac, but the process is exactly the same, and you can watch Chris walk you through it. So, having done that, I said in the last video, the surprise was how fast Cubase runs. And, well, it does. So here we are, we have Cubase. It's a blank session in Cubase, but it's running. It's running magnificently. I did say in the last video how fast it ran. Well, let me show off my new toy. Nine milliseconds latency. That's pretty good. And that is with a buffer size of 256 samples. You take it down to a ridiculously low 32, 4 milliseconds. That'll do me. In the next video, I'm going to look at some of the easiest software to install, as well as some of just the most outrageously complicated, difficult, and not well thought through software. And you know what those have in common? They all use an iLok. So until next time, you take care of yourselves.